Hey, Fiends of the Pod, Nate Wyckoff, your host here again, reminding you like, subscribe, and yes, it is hard to come up with these extra little special things for every episode. But like my good friend behind me, Godzilla, I will not stop until every single building in a metropolitan area is destroyed if you don't like and subscribe. Enjoy, and please go to cultandclassicfilms.com to pick up exclusive cult movies, and also you can subscribe and have them delivered at a discount to your door every single month. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Welcome, friends and fiends, to another episode of Cult and Classic Films Podcast. I am your host, film critic and comedian Nate Wyckoff, and with me today I have two of my favorite members of our group, which all of them are my favorite, so I guess that means either something or nothing, depending on how you look at it. We have with us Tad Mastroianni. How are you doing, Tad?
I'm back, baby.
Yeah, and we also have the return of the one and only Greg Johnson. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm more back.
More back. I have a feeling I said the one and only Greg Johnson, but I have a feeling there's about 13 billion Greg Johnsons.
Not an easy name to Google.
Yeah, you needed to pick something really, really unusual like cult and classic films because nobody ever uses those words together. Okie dokie. So this is part one of a pairing that I am excited about. As I am always excited about our pairings. The only time I'm not excited, everyone, about the pairings is when there's a mainstream movie that we do that it just is as bad as the most schlocky, not even schlocky, that's a good word in my world, the most boring, obvious to guess mainstream film. Like Monster Hunter was the last one. I should have loved it, and I was not a fan.
Don't even get me started on that thing.
Anywho, they did have a creepy 3D animated cat cook. I'll give it that. All right. So this feature is one I like to call Stimulants, the janice.click double feature. We have done a janice.click double feature in the past, and we've done, I don't know if we've done actually a double feature, but we've done several janice.click features. We did janice.click's first complete film, which was Attack of the Scarecrow from Mars. And then we did, of course, McMurderer, the infamous McDonald's short, which is one of our most beloved episodes. You can go back and listen to it or watch in our archives. It is the shorts extravaganza episode where we talk about a bunch of things, one of which is McMurderer. And that is where you can hear the beginning of when our good friend and contributor Jeff decided to quit speaking with us and being on the pod. So he swears he will be back, but we broke him. We broke him with that. Okie dokie. So part one, if you're wondering why stimulants, both of these movies involve stimulants, either crack or meth. So we'll talk about that. Enjoy. Any current crack and meth users, just I guess trigger warning, or is it not a trigger warning if you're a current? I don't even know. It depends on how you live your life. But we're going to talk about first, we're going to talk about Squatch Junkies from 2023. And next week, we're going to talk about this year's brand new Shrek Crack. You heard that right? Shrek Crack. But that is for next episode. Today, Squatch Junkies. All right, Squatch. It is the contemporary term for Sasquatch, as popularized primarily by, Finding Bigfoot? That is a beloved reality TV show. I actually missed that. And I will say this, Cliff from that show, who is a Bigfoot expert, actually, he got back to us for, I wanted to have him on the show, and he declined, as he said, he's not a movie person, but he wishes us the best and suggests I reach out to Bobo. So you know what? We're going to do that. If you're out there listening, Bobo, come on, we'll talk some Bigfoot movies. So this movie is a Janet.click feature. For those who have not listened to our other Janice.click reviews, or you haven't seen a Janice.click movie, boy, you are in for something you have not seen before. They are usually awash with different colors, filmed in VHS, odd sounds, occasionally in and out audio, audio video glitching, very, very strange, very sort of found in the woods, cursed tape vibe filmmaking. Also absurdly comedic while also just unbearably creepy at times. This movie is sort of, not sort of, it is unusual in janice.click's repertoire because it is not written by janice.click. It is written by SLADE SCHALK, and that is, so this is the first sort of film director for hire work that's Stephen Reichstick, also known as janice.click, for legal purposes, as he notes, has made. And I sometimes call these kind of movies mercenary filmmaking because, you know, you're paid to knock out a feature. They are, oh, let's just start because Squatch Junkies. I mean, I'll give you the plot real quick. Um, some people who run moonshine and meth, excuse me, moonshine and crack. Is it crack or meth that they're doing? It's meth, right?
It's something.
It's meth. Meth and moonshine in this movie. Meth, it's duh, obviously. Shrek crack is the crack. Okay. So they were on moonshine and meth, the two M's of the Ozark Mountains. And of course, not of course, Sasquatch has become addicted to meth and moonshine. So he takes to robbing on the street, a good old street robbery of some guy wandering through the woods who is supposed to be the runner for these drugs. Well, the three folks who are involved with the trade or the sale of this material then go hunting for Sasquatch. There's a lot of other little things in there, um, some of which I have thoughts on these. So let's jump right to you guys. Tad, Squatch Junkies, hour and 33 minutes. I will say it opens with a short film from, I believe it's from Gosh Darn Video. Let me correct me on that, but great folks, called Yard Work. You want to talk about that first? It's a relatively, it's a dialogueless feature about a guy who starts doing yard work.
Nathan, I was on drugs the entire time I watched this. I don't remember a damn thing about it. I'll tell you about what I do
because
remember.
you watched the feature. It's drugs enough to watch the feature.
I could have mentioned this before, but I don't need to do drugs when I watch these movies. I get contact highs just watching these movies, which is one of the reasons why I love them. No, I can't comment on that because honestly, at this point, I have forgotten. And I'm going to have some things to say about this. Some of these things I will probably have said before. So, all right. I'll go straight into it. I'll put
Hit
my
it. Hit us with it.
I'll put my movie critic hat on first and foremost and say, guys, I have said this in other pods. If you have listened to me before, I'm talking to janice.click. You don't always have to have a scene extend that long. I've said this before, Nate, you know this. Sometimes it is okay to cut things down. One of the reasons why I love McMurderer so much is because it is concise, it is to the point, and it really takes advantage of some of those techniques. If you're gonna linger on a scene,
this is a good time to mention that we at Cult and Classic Films will be releasing the extended cut of McMurderer in the near future.
Damn it.
Anyway, continue, Tad. Yes,
I'm still
scenes.
I'm still traumatized from Rebel Moon, dude.
You know,
that's when I basically was like, I'm out. Rebel Moon broke me.
You say that, but you've watched the Marvel films. I don't know. I can't tell you about
I have, and I can tell you all the times that those movies have been like, wow, this is bloat. Let's not get into Ghost Rider, my man. Let's move on.
Because that movie's under 2 hours. Anyway.
You're right, I know.
Yes.
And it's still too long.
Okay. So I think this is an interesting take. Because I had a similar note and I want to talk about it, but first I want to hear from Greg. Greg, do you have any thoughts on the short yard work? And then also, which was it's by other folks in Missouri who work alongside janice.click. There's this great community, which we'll kind of talk about in these 2 episodes. But Greg, what were your thoughts on the short and the film Squatch Junkies from 2023?
On the short yard work, it was funny. As soon as you mentioned it, I'm like, oh fuck, I don't remember what that
Oh,
was.
good.
And then
I'm not the only one who had a problem.
well, then I'm like, oh right. And as soon as you said like, there's no dialogue, I'm like, oh right. Um, I actually really dug it. It was goofy, but it was dark. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like they were just kind of like, hey, we're gonna do our shittiest Buster Keaton impression. It I don't know. It felt like it had this edge to it,
Mhm.
and it was really enjoyable. I mean, it got off the pot quickly, which I have to agree with Tad. The pacing of Squatch Junkies just killed me.
It's horrific. It was a slog to get through. All right, I was
Yeah,
trying to be nice, guys, but
it was.
it
Yeah,
was a little bit of a slog.
it. I in a if I were to tell you like, hey, like Greg, what's the most boring film you watched? But this is not by far.
No.
But if like, hey, describe a really boring movie to me. What if I was like, oh, well, these guys that do meth, and make it and sell it, like they're drug runners and makers. They get robbed by Bigfoot out in the woods, and when they go to try and hunt him, the Satan appears and says, "You can't go into my woods and hunt my Bigfoot, otherwise bad things will befall you." Like you'd think I was crazy at that 2 sentence pitch. Like how can that film
That's
be dry?
See, there you go. It's like, hold on. Before we can let the plot advance, let's stop right here. It's like, no, guys, what are you doing here? All right.
It needed more Squatch, less
Yes.
I
junkies, more
mean,
Squatch.
to be fair, we had some Squatch. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna read something that I was typing literally as I watched the movie, so it's not gonna be entirely correct. But how the fuck Sasquatch got a tiny dick with them big ass feet? Primo.
It has been it
That's
has
the stuff
been
I'm looking for.
it
That was
has been
amazing.
debunked. The feet to penis ratio is
It
not a
don't
thing.
it doesn't matter. That
It is
whole
not a thing.
scene, that
Yes.
whole scene made the whole movie
It
for
was
me.
fantastic. Yes. We
And then
have and
he's like friggin' elbow dropping the tent, and at some point
yes.
it just goes into the
So
straight absurd. I'm like, I love this.
I'm trying to remember. I'm terrible that I don't remember her name. A comedian in this film who is she's camping and she's in her tent and Sasquatch literally just walks up in the middle of the daytime. It's like next to a cornfield or something and just starts like pushing and kicking the tent. And at one point, as you said, he like elbow drops it. And just it's ridiculous. And
Well, like I'm pretty sure he kills her first and then just keeps attacking the
yeah.
tent.
And of
And
course she
I'm
opens
like,
the
this is so stupid. I love it.
yeah, if you're referring to her opening the tent and commenting on Bigfoot's penis because it is visible, and I think it's a pinky or a fake. I don't know what it is, but it looks like a pinky. It's and that is of course the big joke. And then yes, he just beats it for a while, and it sounds gruesome, but it's
It's
absolutely ridiculous. It
so
is it is like
stupid.
there's clearly nothing in the tent. He's just it's it seems like
There's
one of
that.
those moments where Janice got to run wild on it because that feels to me like a Janice. Like that's very not saying it wasn't in the script, but it feels very Attack of the Scarecrow on Mars or from Mars rather. You know, where there's the interlude with the scene of the corns making the corn cobs making love. You know, like it's it's really it's this burst of absurdist comedy with this just juvenile anatomy joke in it that it's funny and it works and
It's
it seems apart from the film in
Yes,
some
but
ways.
Yeah.
that's the thing is for me, and this is just me, I guess. That's the movie. Like most of the time, if you put that in almost any other sort of production, that would take you out of the film,
Mhm.
right? But that pulls me back in because I know how these films are supposed to go, and that's what pulls me in. It's not what takes me out. I don't sit back and go, "This is absurd." I look at it and go, "This is what I came for."
Yes.
To that point, I mean, those moments, like I'm coming in and you called it mercenary filmmaking. I'm coming in full well knowing I'm not going to hear a thing that is said. It's going to be half mumbled. It's going to be like 1 inch shy of a boom mic hitting someone in the head. And so like I'm living for these visually absurd moments
Uh-huh.
because the dialogue is just the greens that I need to get to the stake of this. Like I mean,
Fair. Yeah, it's because I believe, and I could be wrong, but I know I think most, if not all, of the dialogue in Janice.click's films, including this one, is recorded on board on the camera and generally filmed on VHS camcorders. So and we think, oh my God, that's terrible. Actually, some of the microphone setups on the VHS camcorders, I mean, those are very expensive machines for the most part. They're actually not terrible, which is why we can hear uh, a lot in general. But you know, it's we recently released the awesome. If you haven't checked it out, go to cultandclassicfilms.com. Get your copy of Blood Red Riverbed by the Stricklands. It is an awesome retro slasher film, written and acted and the whole deal by a native cast right in the heart of Cherokee Nation capital. So really, really cool. But in that film, we're actually working on. I won't say it. There's a little extra stuff that's going to come out early next year, so keep an eye out for that. But we're working on the dialogue for some scenes because it was filmed on board on phones, and while those mics are actually quite effective when you are, say, in a room, they are not effective outside, right? Because they're omnimics, so they're not focused. They catch everything, wind, noise, whatever. That's what happens when you turn away, right? Like I'm going to turn away. It's like, okay, you can't really hear me, but now that I'm back, you can hear me when I'm facing the microphone. Okay, that's a visual joke for any of you listeners out there who are watching.
We have special experience with the reality of not only
Oh
those but
yes.
shotgun mics.
Oh, absolutely. And so yes, and I never thought about that, but it's true. The visual elements in a Janice film are like fantastic. Like I was you really don't see much like this. It's sort of the kind of thing where I love Adult Swim, but when you watch Adult Swim, they often have tons of these little like title card scenes between shows or between commercial breaks where somewhere on the screen it'll say Adult Swim. It'll be a different way. Sometimes it's a nature shot. Sometimes it's an animation. Sometimes it's just black text. It's weird. So they really experiment. That's sort of like the barely there commercial experimentation. Um, and then you have Janice.clicks, which is full untethered. What if? Let's just try it. Let me mess with it. It's like the difference between picking up an art magazine and going to the opening of the gallery show. Janice is the opening of the gallery show. So when you get those moments that hit just right, it's awesome. Like my favorite scenes in this film there's one in particular when we see Sasquatch in the dark, like going to the camera and riding. It's so rad because it's a Sasquatch costume, right? Which we've all seen in tons of movies from the 70s on. And yet it's got glowing green eyes. And green is like a consistent theme in Janice.click's movies, right? And so ever since before Fish Piss, but Fish Piss, I think, was explicit in it um, about green being bad. And it's really cool looking. It's creepy, it's funky, and it's visual splendor. Uh, and it's also visual madness, right? Like if you were to say, can you imagine a 20-second scene of Sasquatch in a meth craze hallucination? You'd see that and be like, that's it. That's exactly what I would do. And that's what it is. That's a great scene. With the I'm trying to remember who so when Kevin Smith made Dogma with fantastic cast, but primarily Ben Affleck and Matt Damon playing two angels who are misguided and thinking they'll kill bad people on Earth for God. There's a huge amount of unused ad-lib footage, particularly of the two of them in the back of a bus, I believe. I remember this. It seared into my head. And it's where like you really see that if you're not an ad-lib comedian, ad-libbing can be a horrible curse. It is either the small rare successes is one of the best blessings you can ever have. It can make a scene. It can even make a film. But all those other times, the vast majority of ad lib, even from fantastic actors and comedians, is uh, unlistenable.
You
Right.
know, Nate, I'll give you a real life comparison of I think what you're hitting at with this with Squatch Junkies, which is there's a improv game that you can play called Ding. It might be known by other names, where people are doing a scene together, and there's kind of a another member of the improv troupe sitting off to the side, and at any point they ding a bell, or they say stop, or they say change, or whatever you're doing for the game, and whatever was just said has to become something new. And it's an
Mhm.
instance for improv to kind of like oh, like mother, it's so great to see you, ding, mom, go fuck yourself. It's a way to shake it up and kind of have some fun. But I had a friend who inevitably, if you dinged him 3 times in a row, he would just swear. He would try something, he would try something, he would try something, and then he'd be like, fuck it. Like he would just in the middle of the scene, just kind of like that's what he went with. And I feel like that's Squatch Junkies. When they don't have anything else to say, they just kind of start swearing,
Yeah.
and it's nonsense, and it's not especially funny,
Right.
but it's filling the void.
Yeah, it's not even like when I say, most people can't ad lib, it's not even a hit on the cast. Um, it's it's what happens when you're trying to play a role, and unless you're Christian Bale and you're gonna like curse out a sound man for like 20 minutes, um, you're probably you pretending to be someone else. And when you do that, the someone else is not someone you fully created. You may have think of ticks or motivations, but that's somebody else's thing that you are trying to embody. And when you're doing that, you're very focused on that creator's intent. Um, and when you're focused on someone else's material like that, trying to then ad lib is it's like a panic response. And it's like a shut door because you're like, well, that requires me personally to come through and create new content for this other person's creation that I don't have. It's not mine. I don't own it. It's hard. And so
I mean,
it
I think
takes
the answer's simple. They should have just been doing meth while they filmed. I mean, that's method.
that is where the term method comes from. It's actually ancient Greek. Yeah, for speedocrates. Anyway, yeah, no, I and because of that, it makes me wonder what the script is like. Because as I said, Slade Chalk, who was in, he was been in parts in a lot of janice.click productions, including I believe Squatch Junkies. Excuse me, obviously. I mean, believe Attack on the Scarecrow from Mars, although I get them mixed up because we have a lot of awesome people that go back and forth. This was, I think, his first feature script, and I want to know how much dialogue was in the script, right? Was this B movie where there's essentially no dialogue, just a concept thrown out, and all of the actors ad lib the entire scenes, or was it Dogma, where snippets of ad lib material that was deemed good works its way into a small percentage works its way in? Because I have a feeling that there wasn't a lot of meat in some of the really talky scenes for the cast, and because of that, as you said, Greg, they do that. They repeat themselves, and then it gets more emphatic. And when you run out of sort of emphatic energy, then you start cursing. And again, I have no fucking problem with cursing, but I will say it gets tiresome because it's not content. And when we speak, it takes up space, like you said. So it's like fake content. Um, the one scene that is particularly there are two that I can think of that are sort of egregious in terms of pacing. The first one is an early scene where we're introduced to the two of the main characters as they wait for the delivery of meth and moonshine. There's a lot of back and forth, and it needed to be less of it because we get everything we need. Okay, the Kyle Reese's character, who's in a wheelchair, his memory is that he was attacked mistakenly by a Sasquatch who paralyzed his legs. So he's a big Squatch believer, whereas the other guy, and I'm terrible that I don't remember the names. the characters. I think is it might be Ben Logan as Hunter. So I apologize, anybody listening, if I get this wrong. I'm just going to go ahead and go with or Hunter as Ben Logan. I'm just going to go along with describing the characters.
I
He's
do want to
like the
call out the wheelchair. I feel like every scene or kind of bit involving that wheelchair, I felt was really good.
it
Like,
was
like him at the stairs, like, come on, man, I want to go up. Like, I'm not fucking carrying you. Like, come on, get me up the stairs, get me up the stairs. Like,
yes.
like
Yes, I believe that's Kyle Reese, who was the lead. And we've seen his work. He was the lead in Fish Piss, so you can see he can carry a scene, and he puts the most out there. So even when you end up repeating and cursing, whatever, it's it's clear that he has the sense of this scene is there's a slow spot that's hitting, or we're stuck, and so I just have to do something. I have to put something out there to keep it going. Um, the problem is when you don't have, and again, this is just my assumptions, when you don't have enough dialogue to play off of, then it's hard to edit a scene down once you've recorded it, because all of the ad lib cuts into itself. And so the repetition then stays because it's too difficult to parse it out into a shorter scene. Um, the other thing that I noticed, because the worst scene of that is the discussion at the table before the sort of bullyish main drug dealer character pulls out the tarot cards, um, because he believes in tarot. He doesn't believe in Sasquatch. He believes in this very peculiar usage of tarot cards, where he puts them all across the table and flips over a select few, and that shows them who each of them are in this story and what they have to fight.
which
Okay.
again, another example, the tarot bits were fun. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like every scene needed almost like a prop
Mm-hmm.
to like elevate it. And like, like when he's like, okay, let's see what we all are, guys, and like flips over and it's the fool, and you just kind of barely hear mumble the one character, like, oh, come on, man. Like,
Yeah. Right.
and that seems
Right.
great. Like, it's a needless scene
Mm-hmm.
on its face, but it's funny, it's engaging. All the scenes, yeah, again, all the scenes that had like kind of a prop to them,
Mm-hmm.
or who had Squatch, which I'm going to count as a giant prop, even though it was an
Yes.
actor in a costume. Those were great. They were fun.
That's a good point. I knew an aspiring filmmaker who we never got it off the ground, but we're working a project years ago, and he had this thing where he called I think he called them goodies. He said every scene needs a goodie, which is some sort of like visual audio, some sort of bonus that's like, oh, that's unusual, that's unique, or that's unexpected, or that's different in a scene. Every scene had to have one of those. That way, even if the scene was not maybe the most effective that you wanted it to be or whatever, there was something that was going to be that moment of interest for the viewer. So even a dull scene maybe, or a necessary plot scene, would have some sort of interest, whether it's an effect, an explosion effect, or a comedic punchline. Okay, there had to be something, and if you couldn't find it in that scene, you had to rework it and figure that out. I really liked that. That was a great idea, because again, you can't always tell when you're working so close to a project, like the ad lib scenes. You can't tell what's going to work or not. And then once you have it in the can, or in this case on the cassette, then you're sort of stuck with it, right? You're like, how do I make this work? So we get that repetition. That's sort of the biggest, I'm not going to say failure of Squatch Junkies. It is the problem with Squatch Junkies, though. It would be much more effective as probably a short as it is, because I don't think there are enough beats to flesh out. Um, the parts that are there that are effective, they actually reminded me of the Blair Witch. Of course, you have the woods, the rural, there's something in the woods. But it's actually when they go into the abandoned house and the basement scenes, especially the last basement scene, where the Squatch, sort of spoiler alert, kills yet again, and is I believe that's really the end, right? Or no, there's one tag with Satan, aka man in corporate suit, um, which, hey, uh, you know, appropriateness in advertising. When you, it was very Blair Witch. It was standing at the bottom of an abandoned basement, staring at a wall in the dark. It's a freaky moment in and of itself, because it's a freaky set. it was weird that that reminded me of it. And actually, the whole film then sort of called back to Blair Witch for me, which Blair Witch in and of itself is sort of, whether you think it's successful 100% of the time or not, it is a case study for improv without comedy, but also making something engaging with nothing visually spectacular, right? The film is really effective at having no visual splendor. It actually looks like real amateur footage of a person walking with a camcorder, essentially. We know that's not really the case, or partially is, but that's an example. If you fail that mark, and I think even that film failed that mark occasionally and got slow, you end up with a really hard watch. This movie's beginning and end has events. So the problem then is the middle. And you can usually work through, and I think this one does, as you said, it's not the most boring film you'd pick if you were to pick. We've watched some really, I will never not think of Chupacabra when we watched this, because that was, I can't even remember who was with us when we watched that, who was there with me, because it was sort of a blight on my memory. Um, and it was the
Wasn't me,
same
I can
thing.
tell you that.
It was the same thing. Just boring, right? So that's my art critique with this, and I think it's an interesting learning experience, probably for Janice and for Slade as a scriptwriter, because the idea, as you said, Greg, when you summarize it, is kind of great, right? Like a meth addicted Sasquatch, that's rad. We should have seen the Sasquatch every other scene. He should have been there with us in a parallel story, his own story, paralleling the three characters that are going to hunt him. And instead, it sort of tries to go with that Blair Witch concept of you never see him until the end, even though we do see him a little bit here and there.
Well, I think here's a big question for both of you. I saw this movie as a comedy with, vague horror elements.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it should have picked one? I mean, I think it should have picked horror. I think it should have cut all the jokes, um, make it these, make the characters a little more desperate for the mouth. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's anyone involved. I don't think that's their forte
Right.
necessarily. But I don't know. I think it had these really creepy, cool. You compare it to the Blair Witch,
Mm-hmm.
um, these creepy, nice moments, but it was really a comedy. But it it wasn't especially funny in these long
Right.
stretches in the middle.
You had
I think
comedic
you
elements between long stretches.
I think you have a valid point, particularly because one of the reasons why I love McMurderer so much is because it stuck to one of those concepts and did it very well. So,
Which
yes,
concept
and
was that? I have to, I have to ask.
Was
Which?
I'm the
McMurderer,
fucking clown.
I'm the fucking so McMurderer is one of those things where you can probably find it funny in certain contexts, but it doesn't seem like it was meant to be that way.
It's
Like it
interesting because I
meant
read it the opposite.
really, you looked at
Yeah,
it more of a comedy. I looked
I
at it more as
did.
like a kind of like a disturbing profile. I mean,
Well, I mean,
Tad,
he
if there was a shooting and this was left on someone's cutting room table in their house, I'd be like, oh yeah, like that's a fair manifesto. Like this person was unhinged. Like sure.
right, right. Like again, I'm looking at it from just a pure like absorb the material. What is in front of me? Do not deny the evidence of your eyes and ears. When you
I
try
will
and
just
straddle
remind
the
you that
line,
the lead character masturbates onto French fries and regrows his father as a green morph creature.
right?
That is the film
But
we're
it's
talking.
not played necessarily as comedy to me.
Fair.
It plays first as
Well,
disturbing,
it's
and then
disturbing.
the
Yes, the visuals
disturbing
especially.
you can play disturbing in your head up into the like this is in uncomfortable enough that it starts to be funny because it's kind of a defense mechanism sort of thing.
Mm.
When you straddle the line too much, that's when I've seen that, and Greg's right. I've seen this in other things what we've watched that are amateur films where it kind of straddles the line either between like horror and comedy or comedy and something else. And if you don't lean too much in one direction or the other, it kind like you end up with too much
Do you think it's
not
because it's a
enough.
collaborative film? Whereas usually Janice
Possibly.
has, because when you're working with a collaborative film, this was what I was thinking too. It feels like Janice, who got some real licks of Janiceism in there. And of course, it's very clearly shot. If it wasn't Janice that made it, I'd be like, oh, they were inspired by Janice for this
Right.
because it looks like a Janice film. But there's less sort of risk taking in the filmmaking, and I think, which is kind of a common thing. I think in mercenary filmmaking, right? I think when you know the person that you're shooting the material from, you're less likely to take risks because you want to respect their material, and uh, you don't want to offend them by by seeming to rewrite or reinterpret
By by
their
kind of
script or
like
whatever.
taking it over.
Exactly, which is
Yeah.
interesting because when you don't know the person, right? If a studio just brings you a script and says, "Hey, we bought this. We need you to make this movie," you can do whatever you want because you don't really have that pressure or that sort of hanging over you, even when Slade probably, I don't know Slade personally, but knowing that he's familiar with Janice's work and Janice as a person, probably was like, do this, right? Just do this. And so Janice probably could have taken more liberties, but again, you have that sort of holding you back element sometimes when you're working from someone else's material. And I think that might be part of the issue here because if you are making the film and you're sensing that a scene is going on too long and you don't have, like, you can do whatever you want essentially, like it's your movie, you're going to do something, right? You're going to shoot some extra weird b-roll and throw it in that scene. You're going to do something. And when you're working from another script and you don't want to change it too much, then you can feel you can take less risks, and then we get sort of these long shots, right? The other thing that would have helped, I think, especially like when we're talking about the tarot scene, when they actually put the tarot cards out on the table face down, it got a little better because, one, as Greg said, we have a focal point, we have a prop to pay attention to build the story from instead of just talking heads, but also because there's not really any movement from the characters, they're still just sitting around the table. um, the camera uh, takes on the role of providing movement by doing close-ups of the cards. And when you're doing a really long talking head scene, unless there's a thematic intent to have it from one static camera the whole time, you really will benefit from the whole, talking, literal talking heads, right? A close up or a medium shot of person Y, then person Z, then person X, right? You want to have that sort of change in perspective more frequently because it gives you a sense that there's some sort of movement. It's why in a stage production, they'll give you something to do, right? Walk over here, pick up this vase, look at it, set it down, take a drink of this drink. Like they want you to have some sort of um, something to do physically while you're delivering your dialogue. Because otherwise, literally, you could just have in any stage show, pretty much, you could just have people standing still in front of a microphone reading their line. And
Well,
that's different.
here does this fix the movie, or not fix it because it's not broken necessarily, but does this improve the film? You add a fourth junkie to the group, it's the camera. You never see them. That's the
That would be a
perspective.
very interesting concept. A whole first person shoot of this would have actually been very fascinating. It would have been, you'd have had to tweak it, right? Because that character would have had to been present all the time, or would they? Do we
Yeah,
really
I
care
mean,
if you go from a first person to like an omnipresent? I don't think we
and
do.
I mean, every time you're showing Sasquatch whatever the hell they're doing, you do wide shots,
Yeah.
and then you do those. You can make it clear with the
Yeah.
camera. Hey, here's kind of a god's eye view versus, hey, we're back to our
I
normal
really like that
POV.
idea. And that's again, right? That's that risk, that
Yeah.
creative choice. Also, I want to say that Greg, we've all known each other a long time. Greg, I in college, you always love to mess with weird perspectives, like second person perspective. And so I love that that's where your mind went, is this sort of literal altering of the camera's eye view.
Well, I
Um,
mean, I think you saying Blair Witch, I'm like, oh, like what if that's all that Squatch Junkies needed to be
mhm.
like, oh, like then you're automatically kind of invested because you I feel like there's this maybe this is just psycho babble, but like you don't want you to die, so you
Right.
don't want this camera perspective because you feel like it's you, even though it's a character, it's someone
That's
else that's
Janice, make a movie with that. Make a movie that's all first person because I really like
or
that.
or write in and tell me that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Either
Or
or.
yeah, or make a short film that skewers you quite specially, like the one. Did I share that with you guys? I did, right? The short film that he made for Jeff after McMurderer.
I don't
No,
know.
no, I did not see this.
Wow. Okay. So listeners, if you go if you go to cultandclassicfilms.com, you can pick up our release of Janice's second full-length feature film called Fish Piss, which I absolutely adore. And on that is both the section of our famed episode Shorts Extravaganza where Jeff, Tad, and I talk about Jeffrey Tucker talk about McMurderer, Janice's I think breakout short, and and then we have the I think 12-minute or so short DVD that we received in the mail that just said for Jeff, and on the back it said I'm sorry. And it is a film made specifically for Jeff after that. I will have to, I can't believe I've never shared that with you, but it's on the disc. So go ahead and pick that up and you will not be disappointed. But yes,
I
this is
don't. Is that considered? Is that hate mail or is that like adoration? Because I've been trying to get hate mail on this podcast for over 4 years, and Jeff's the one that gets the hate mail.
Yeah, I don't think it's hate mail. I think it's sort of like you're looking for an Uwe bowl, right? That's not this is
Getting
close. This
challenged to
is
a boxing
I
match.
think janice.click and Jeffrey Tucker are soulmates, and this is their binding union is
it
this
is so
film.
I
So
will tell you
and
this. After talk Janice wants nothing more than Jeff to return to the pod to talk about his movies. And
So in other words,
it's like the kitten that loves the older house cat, and the older house cat is Jeff, who's like, get the fuck away from me.
Jeff is
I
the
will
runaway
not be
bride.
replaced.
you know what it
That
is?
is
It's what video game was it where like they got like a 2-star rating, but they put it on the front in between like
Oh,
something, so it cut
oh,
it
what
off. So
was that?
it looks like it was cut off, but no, it was a 2-star rating that was like from some magazine that was like okay or whatever.
That's
But
utterly brilliant.
yeah.
I Cult Classic will now have images on our Instagram of our reviews. They are an odd proportion, so they may be cut off. Yeah, no, yeah. So anyway, listeners, thank you so much. Let's go ahead with recommendations. I'll start. Do I recommend Squatch Junkies as a watch? Yeah, if you like SOV weird bizarre curse tape kind of movies, of course, especially if you've never seen a janice.click film. If I saw this first, I would be intrigued enough that I would go start picking up and watching all of janice.click stuff. And then I would be amazed because there's a lot, I think there's a lot more meat on some of the others. If I were, say, SLADE SCHALK as a first feature length film, which I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe, then I would not be disappointed with the way this came out, but I would, as I think we all can when we see, say, a published work or something come out, be like, ah, yes, I will do this differently next time in X, Y, and Z ways. However, if you love, say, fish piss, and you're looking for something really out there, this is going to be the least out there of janice.click's features. Um, uh, Attack of the Scarecrow from Mars is bonkers. Fish Piss is more bonkers. Squatch Junkies is the least bonkers. And then we're going to talk about Shrek Crack next week, but I'm going to give you a guess as to whether or not that is the most bonkers or not. And you'll have to listen next week. But I recommend it. If, though, you are already on the fence with this really experimental type of, it's not plotless, but it's plot divergent film, then you probably will still not enjoy Squatch Junkies because it does have a very loose sort of ephemeral plot line, especially towards the end. There are characters that come and go. Let me tell you something, Missouri. You guys nail crackheads and meth heads in the country. I mean, Tad and I are from New Hampshire, so we're not unfamiliar. And
This is a whole different level.
yeah, it's pretty much if anything, they're too coherent and too effective in this film. But yes, no, well, they're dealers. Okay, to be fair, they're dealers. So I recommend it, but there is a caveat. If you're already on the fence, you're not sure that you are in love with Janice's other films, this will be an interesting departure. Conversely, if you didn't like Janice's other films for the plot, the fact that it's too loose, too experimental, but you like the look, maybe Squatch Junkies will actually be more your cup of tea, because you know that there's going to be some interesting things coming even after the sort of slog scenes where there's a little too much talking heads, because the plot is clearer here. I think from A to Z, you've got everything's in the same time. You know, it's more narratively conventional, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But so maybe that's it. But again, if long stretches like me babbling here are tough for you, then Squatch Junkies may be one to pass on. But if you're an SOV lover and you're curious, or you've seen other janice.clicks and you've liked them, I mean, it may not be the top choice, but I think Janice and Slade have put together a movie that's certainly got enough fascination to watch through. Tad, would you recommend Squatch Junkies? Yes, no, and why?
Despite my criticism, yes, there is an audience for this, and I'm part of it. So it's, again, I always am happy to see people who are willing to put themselves out and make this sort of amateur effort, especially because this is essentially, I think we call what we call this negative budget film making.
Right. It's what we got lying around. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for the flaws, there is so much in this that that still sticks in your mind and is worth the price of admission, which is $. So yes, I do recommend it.
And I also say, I didn't really mention it, but the scenes in and Greg mentioned it too, with Kyle Reese's character in the chair, sort of shouting after the other guys because he can't get up the stairs. The abandoned house in the woods scene where I believe Squatch is sort of squatting. Um, I loved all those. That actually, once they moved to that location where all of a sudden they're sort of not in their element, so they're not comfortably sitting around a table, they're actually moving and looking, that actually is a real strength. And so there were moments where I'm like, okay, see, you did something. You did a scene change and it affected the way the characters acted. So no one really likes to watch a home movie where everyone's sitting at home. That's the same concept between everybody sitting and talking at the kitchen table. It's real hard to make it work. Greg, do you recommend Squatch Junkies? If so, or if not, why and to who? Or
Nate, I highly recommend Yard Work. I thought that was I thought that was really novel. I thought it was funny, it was interesting. It's something that I'd seen before but felt fresh. Um, and I think that answers whether or not I recommend Squatch
well, and
Junkies.
I'll say this about Yard Work too. I was like, you guys need to explain it to me. I do know what happened. It does get a little unclear at the end. It's not the bad thing, but I will say, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who the lead was. I don't know if the lead is the writer, etc. But Gosh Darn Video did a great job, because you said it has like this sort of like charming happiness about him. Like he smiles, he's ready to face the day, but it's not over the top ridiculous, and it's not over the top grim and morose and terrifying. It has this sort of weird up and down motion between uh uh unnerving because you know something's going to happen, and at the same time just watching somebody sort of pete it around the yard. And I did enjoy that a lot, and I hadn't really given it a huge amount of thought until that moment. So all right. Thank you all so much for listening. Please go to cultandclassicfilms.com, join our mailing list, send us hate mail, fan mail, requests, questions, confusion, anything you want to info@cultandclassicfilms.com. Remember, Tad is always looking for hate mail. And yeah, join our subscription program where you can get exclusive cult films delivered right to your door in regular or collector's editions with signed posters, 5-piece Pog sets for every movie. Remember, milk cap. Sorry, Pog is trademarked, and it's totally worth it. Not just because I am the president of the company. but it's really cool. You support indie filmmakers. Every single sale goes has money going directly into the filmmakers' pocket so they can make more movies. As I said, we got Fish Piss by janice.click. We have some Adam Thorne movies, Mark Mackner. We have the infamous, the best transfer ever, and available anywhere else from Pulgasari, the famous 1985 North Korean Godzilla-esque movie. All this cool stuff. So check it out, get it, and listen next week when we have our talk about Shrek Crack, the brand newest of the new janice.click movie as we speak here. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Cult and Classic Podcast. This podcast is important to me, but what's more important are the rights, privileges, and freedom from violence of everyone in this country and in this world. And that means supporting Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to make a donation, please go ahead and visit cultandclassicpodcast.com, where we have a list of places you can donate and help out. And please stay safe.